Last session we were talking about automation, right? We learned things, how programmatically our container will work, how it will create object, and how it will do the dependency injection. So far we learned complete MVC application you may not able to implement, but so far the content which you learned, right, using that, what you can able to do is at least you can write some classes. You can write some classes. You can name them like controller, service, DAOs. You can write classes with minimal logic or simple methods. You can write the classes, simple poser classes. Okay, consider them like simple posers. No much complicated logic. A simple plain Java class. Simple posers you can write, right? So far you are capable to write simple poser classes, and you guys can able to configure them into XML file. You can create a Spring XML file. There you can configure all your bean classes, controller, service, and the DAO beans you can put here. And if these beans have any dependencies, here if these beans have any dependencies, any dependency property if you have here, if you have any property dependency or any dependency, any data type as a dependency if you have here, either your controller or service, DAO, you can pass that dependency from XML file by using, for that particular dependency you should be having a setter method here or a parameterized constructor here. Using setter method or parameterized constructor, you know how to inject them into each class. When you have dependencies, you know how to deal them. From XML file you will be calling property tag, and you will be passing values or collections or references from here. How many types we have? If it is a simple property, simple primitive, using value you can pass that data. If it is a secondary type, we will be using a reference. If it is a collection type, we used to use child tags. Child tags like list tag or set tag or map tag. For primitives, we used value and injected primitive value from here. If we have secondary type, using reference we injected. If we have collections, we used a list, set to map, and in last session we saw property also. We can use property tag also. I mean props, right? Using props tag, properties also we can inject. Like map, we can pass name value pair. Using props, we can pass property key and value also. So any kind of collection or any kind of primitive, for primitives, the simple value is enough. For secondary types, we use references. For collections, we use list, set, map, props. Which means whatever class you write here, right? Your controller or service, DAO, poser, any poser class with any dependency, with a setter or parameterized constructor. Any type of dependency you can have here that you can able to pass. As of now, you are capable to do all this. You can able to write simple poser classes. You can able to do the dependency injection into it. But here, coming to the configurations, after writing the class, right? After creating your class, in few steps you are doing it, right? First, create a class with the dependencies and setter or constructors. With the dependencies, setter or constructors, you are creating your class. In the next step, you are doing configuration. Configure it in XML file. In two steps, you are achieving it. First, you are creating your class with the dependencies and setters and constructors. Then next, you are doing this configuration here. Usually in development, this is how we do. We write all our classes with the dependencies. Then we do the dependency injections into it. Whichever class you write with the dependencies, we inject the dependencies from XML file. Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you need to configure it. Excuse me. So, going forward in Spring or a Spring framework, what they did is, instead of doing these configurations manually here, they approached, or they given an approach like something automation here. As a developer, this phase anyway we can't avoid it. As a developer, always you need to write your classes, your methods, that you can't avoid it. But these configurations you can avoid. As a developer, you need not to spend a lot of time for the configurations. At least few configurations, Spring can do automatically. What are all that configurations it can able to do? As a developer, you need to write your classes that anyway you can't avoid. So you need to write your poser classes with the dependencies. Your poser classes with the dependencies. Whatever class, it can be a service, controller or DAO. You need to write your poser classes with the dependencies, and configurations instead you doing, Spring automatically will do it for you. When you have dependencies here, a primitive dependency or a secondary dependency, forget about collections. Okay, forget about collections. I'll tell you how to do this as well. When you have a poser class with the dependencies, you need not to go to XML and hard code them. You need not to hard coding, in a sense, you need not to configure them from XML file when you have dependencies in your class. And you need not to even configure your bean class here. And you need not to inject your dependencies here from XML file. This step they automated. As a developer, instead, you doing it, IOC container will do it for you. Which means all your poser classes, objects creation, as well as dependency injection will be taken care by IOC container, rather than as a developer you configuring it in XML file. What is the advantage if we go with this automation approach? As I was showing a video right in the last session, to make a car, if you depend on engineers, they are like developers for making or manufacturing the cars. If a car manufactured by a engineer or a man who is working, if car complete parts are painting work, or the other parts, the fitting work or the mechanical work, if everything is done by a person, he may not able to reproduce, or he may not able to produce the same kind of car, same kind of quality again and again. If a man do or a manufacture a thing without any robotics help, if you try to make the same car again, he may not able to produce with the same quality. And if developers, I mean if engineers are producing that cars, let's say if a car released into the market, Scorpio N, okay, recently Mahindra released it a 1 year back, right? So Scorpio N they released. and immediately they got, you know, more than 1 lakh bookings they got. They received 1 lakh bookings they received for this car immediately when they released in 2023 somewhere in January. If Mahindra factory, if they are making all these cars, if they are making these cars in their factory with only engineers, without any robots, as soon as they receive these bookings, they should able to deliver them. Let's say if they don't have robots within the factory, though they have a lot of engineers there, lot of engineers who manually preparing the cars. Let's say group of engineers are there, 1,000 engineers are there, 1,000 automobile engineers they have, and each four or each five become like a group and making the car. If I divide 1,000 by 5, maybe 200. So 200 teams they divided, and without any robot support, if they try to prepare this car, let's say each team will take to make one car delivery, one car will take, let's say, 1 month. In a month they can able to deliver, in a month they can able to deliver 200 teams can deliver 200 cars. By when they could able to deliver this 1 lakh bookings, 1 lakh by 200, it will be around 400 months, right? So they need to wait for 400 months to receive it. 400 months meaning it is almost 30-40 years. Whoever books it, they need to wait for 30 years to get their car delivery. If this factory is using engineers manually, if they are developing it, instead, the problem is, if engineers are making it, there will be lot of problems here. If you can see, they will face lot of problems. One is customers will not wait. They do the booking, and if showroom committed to deliver them in 1 month, they should able to deliver, or else they need to refund their booking amount. So within 1 month, anyway, they can't able to deliver it. If manually they are preparing these cars, they can't able to produce it. Not only that, whatever 200 cars they are producing by 200 teams, they may not produce the same quality. One team may produce one kind of quality, another team, because man working here, they may not able to produce the same quality. One team may design it in a one way, another team may design or may apply things in a different way, painting quality, or at least one car to another car. When you check, there will be a lot of differences you can find. Like if you are crafting, or if you are creating a wooden craft, you may not able to design the same craft again manually if you are doing it. Same way here, engineers are working to deliver the cars, to prepare the cars, and manually if they are working, they can't able to produce not more than 200 for a month, and the same kind of quality they can't achieve. So end of the day, they lose their business. Though they have the great appearance and strong vehicle, good reviews in the market, still they can't achieve this 1 lakh cars in coming 400 months. Instead, they are depending on, a team of engineers working manually. If somebody doing it automatically, if they have And these engineers also, they can't work 24 by 7, right? 200 teams maybe work 8 hours per day or 10 hours per day. 10 hours per day they can work. They can't work 24 by 7, 365 days. They will take holidays, leaves also. Festival holidays, leaves, sick leaves. So achieving that feat may go until 50 years, 40 years. Between these engineers may fed up with this and they can rejoin another company also. Who knows that? Instead, they are depending on them if they have automated factory, a fully automated factory, if they have, and if robots are working there, if robots are working there, and if they install robots, say in 1,000 robots or 10,000 robots, they can install any number of robots. Robots will not ask for any salary or they don't ask for any leave. They can install as many as they want. And if you assign the same job to the robots, making body to painting and fixing everything, if you assign to these robots, they will work for 24 by 7, 365 days. And at least this 1 lakh cars they can achieve maybe in 1 year. All these robots can able to deliver 1 lakh cars. Depends on the volume of robots and the material available. And while doing this, robots will not do any mistake. They will have a particular job, 100% they will execute it as it is. And whatever 1 lakh cars they deliver with the same quality. Why I am telling all this story is during application development, as a developer, if you do the configurations, every time if you do the configurations, it will take a lot of time for you. Instead, if you go with automated approach, do we have robots here means no. In Spring, do you have robots means no, but automation is kind of robotics only. Automating things is like a robotics only. In our software industry, right? Like how automobile industry or construction field or in any other field, how people are using automated things. Here for our software development also we can use automated code. Like for testing, if you see, people will use automation testing. So what automation testing will provide, instead of doing manual testing every time, a man need to go to every form and he need to enter the fields and he need to validate them. Instead, you doing it, if you write some script will execute. As soon as you start the script, it will go to each and every page and it will enter the fields automatically. It will test the application. If there are any errors, it will report it. Every time as a developer, you are going to application and spending 2 3 days to test the entire application. If you write some Selenium script, automatically it will validate entire application and it will report you in minutes. In minutes, it will test everything and it will report you whether your application is having any bugs or not. That will help a lot from the testing point of view. What about development? In development, frameworks will help from that point. Frameworks will automate so many things and minimum configurations they will expect from you. So Spring also, right? Going forward, we see Spring and Spring Boot microservices, right? In Spring Boot, if you go from Spring framework to Spring Boot, lot of automations they we do there, and you can see it. As a developer, you need not to spend a lot of time in Spring framework itself, right? For creating objects and for doing dependencies injection in early 2000, you know, somewhere in 2012 or 13, somewhere this Spring latest modules released, Spring 3 with annotations and lot of features they brought to automate the things. As a developer, you need not to worry about object creation and dependency injection. Little bit they automated it. We will learn that the basic things how it is automated. First thing, we are creating object manually, right? Manual object creation is automated. How? Usually we create objects, right, after writing poso classes, a simple poso class. After writing a simple poso class, we used to configure this class in XML file using bean tag. This is how manually you used to configure the class. So in auto object creation, you need not to do this step. You need not to configure it. You need not to configure it. You can assign this job to your IOC container. It can able to do it for you. It can able to do it for you. It can able to create your POSO class object. How? Do I need to give any instructions apart from this XML file? In XML file we used to configure it before. Do I need to configure something else as an alternative for it? Means yes. Instead of you configuring this class here, you just need to put an annotation on top of your class to automate it. In manual configuration, you used to do this and finally used to load it into IOC container. We load it into IOC container, create classes, configure it into XML and load it into IOC. Then as soon as you start IOC, it will read this class and it will create object. We can automate it. So how to automate this? How to automate it? You can use stereotype annotations to automate object creation, right? Given stereotypes support. Stereotype annotation support they given. Stereotype annotations. Stereotype annotations given to you to automate it. How they will help, where I need to place them, what are all the annotations I have available for. So during your class creation as a developer, when you get a requirement, you will create a front end page, then you will shift your focus to write backend classes, right? You will be creating a front end view, then immediately you will go and write a controller class, then service class, then DO class. There you are done. Your implementation is completed. So during writing your classes, right, same way here also, if you want to use stereotype annotation, if it is your controller, let's say I have a front end form. For that front end, I want to write a controller. I have a view here. From view, I am receiving the data. So I want to write controller. If it is a controller, right? During writing your controller class, my controller. Usually controller responsibility, right? As per MVC, controllers will always help you to read data which is coming from front end. So if you have a controller here, while writing this controller class, right, you need to mention an annotation on top of this controller @controller annotation. @controller annotation you have to put on top of your controller class. When we go to REST based API, right, there we will see alternative is @REST controller. In microservices, we can see it. Either controller annotation or REST controller annotation. On top of controllers, we put them. So these two are stereotypes that we use for controller class. Stereotype annotations on top of your controller class, you need to place them. And what if I have a service class? So if you have a service class, my service, On top of service class, you need to use stereotype annotation called @service. You need to use @service stereotype on top of service classes. Usually we will have controller, service and DAO. On top of DAO class, where you have CRUD operations. Class my DAO. On top of DAO class, you need to use @repository. @repository stereotype you need to use on top of your DAO class. All these are annotations. Important annotations: controller, REST controller, service, repository. So for view, I will be having a controller which will read data from front end, and controller will send data to service. There we execute business logic. Finally, it will send to DAO to execute the database operations. Apart from controller, service, DAO, your application will have configurations also. Any application will have configurations. Configurations first, right? Connection configurations or any other integrations will be taken place into any application. So if you have such configurations, right? Configurations, class my configurations. This is again important annotation. On top of your configurations, right? Configurations class, you need to use @configuration annotation. Important annotation, because all the configurations will be taken place here. Application related configurations, right? We will be putting here. So configuration annotation also we have for the configurations. What are all these annotations will do? What if I use controller, service, repository or configuration annotations while writing my classes? If you use these annotations, you need not to use this XML file for configurations. You need not to configure your bean classes here. Is it? Yes. Your application can have thousands of classes. You need not to even configure a single class here. You need not to configure even a single class here. So you can avoid this configuration. Most headache thing. As a developer, you can have your focus on writing this code, writing your controller logic, service logic, DO logic, and configurations logic, rather than shifting focus to configurations. Instead of doing this XML configurations, you can sit relax and focus on your business code, focus on your controller and database code. And all these objects creation job will be taken care by IOC container. How it will do? While using stereotype annotations, you need XML file. Without XML also we can do. But yeah, let's say with XML. In XML file, you need to configure one namespace here, context namespace. If you remember, in last session we used it to load the properties into context. Using this context namespace, there is a tag called component scan. Context colon component hyphen scan. Component scan base package is equal to, you need to enter your class's package name. Usually we will start with com dot organization name dot application name. Let's say it is employee management system EMS dot star. You will be having child packages. This is the root package for all my child packages, com dot rb dot employee management system. Within this employee management system, I have a package called web. There I have controllers. I have a package name called service. There I have service classes. I have a package name called DAO. There I have DAO classes. And I have some config package. There I have configuration classes. All these child packages are considered part of my com.rbu.ems package. When you configure this in your XML file, and as soon as you load it into your IOC, as soon as you load it into IOC, okay, by looking into this context colon component scan, IOC will understand, okay, developer must be using annotations. As soon as IOC will see this context colon component scan tag, right, it will recognize that, okay, developer using stereotype annotation, so that I need not to expect any beans here. Of course, if you want to configure beans here, you can configure. But what IOC will do, immediately as soon as it finds the component scan with a package name, what it will do, it will expect all your classes from this package. It will expect all your implementations from this package. IOC will go each and every package. It will go inside web package, service package, DO package, and configuration package. It will visit each and every package of your application, and it will read each class, your controller class, service class, DO class, configuration class. It will read them if you configure them with this stereotype annotations, either controller or REST controller or service, repository or configuration. When you mention the stereotype annotations on top of your class, then it will recognize that classes are Spring Framework classes. You are trying to using Spring Framework to create the objects. My controller object, service object, DO object, and configuration object will be created by IOC now. As soon as it will visit and see the stereotypes, right, it will understand your requirement. Okay, he is expecting this as a controller. Let me create controller object. He is expecting it as a service. Let me create as a service object, repository object, and configuration object. Automatically it will go each and every package of this, each and every child package of this main root package, and it will identify your classes with the stereotypes, and it will start creating objects for them. So this is how one level of automation we are achieving here, objects creation. So as a developer, imagine when you have, like I was giving example, right, 1 lakh bookings. Like you have 1 lakh classes you are going to write for your application, 1 lakh classes you are going to write for your application. Though you have huge team also here, if you are doing manual development, right, it will take a lot of time. But if you have something automated support, within very less time you can able to achieve this feat. Though you have thousands of classes, lakhs of classes, you need not to bother about them, how to configure them in XML file. What if I do a mistake in XML file? You need not to bother about it, because in an automated approach, you are completely avoiding XML based configurations. So Spring will take care about your objects creation. With the stereotypes, when you mention, automatically it will visit each package and it will scan your packages. If it find any class with stereotype annotation, it will create object automatically. So as a developer, you just focus on coding rather than configuration in XML file. So let me show you how it will work. Guys, are you able to understand in sync with me, or am I deviating you? Right? Yeah. Okay. Simple. Just you need to remember the stereotype annotations. Let me give you the tree of stereotype annotations. Okay. The main parent annotation for all the stereotypes is @component. There is one annotation called @component. @component annotation is having all these chains. @controller, @rest controller, @service, at repository at the rate configuration and we have one annotation called at the rate rest repository also. This many stereotype annotations we have. Okay, where do we use them? Controller you can use on top of controller class. On controllers, you need to use them. This is on service classes, or you may say business classes. On service or business classes you need to put it. Repository or rest repository you need to use on top of DAO classes. On DAO classes, on top of DAO classes. Configuration on top of configurations. On configurations, like your connection creation or connection pool creation, connection pool, REST templates, any configuration related. And what about this component? This component you can use anywhere, any like validation classes, on miscellaneous classes or on util classes. Any miscellaneous classes, right? Any utility classes. You can say utility classes. On utility classes like date converters. If you have a lot of date operations, a date converter I want, or some validation classes, I want to do field level validations, anything. Okay, you can use component annotation. Mostly, right? Mostly the important annotations are controller, rest controller. Configuration is again very important annotation. Okay, and repository service also. So let's see how to use them. Instead, how to use them, let's see how objects will be created when I use stereotypes. Excuse me. So create a project, new string auto object. Yes, if you are not speaking, go on mute. Yeah. So I'll write simple classes here. I'll write simple classes. Form dot rbu dot employee management system dot web. I'll write a simple class my controller and consider it as a controller class. At the rate controller I will use here. Same way REST controller also you can use, but not here. In REST based applications we will see that. But that one also like similar like your controller only. So controller stereotype I added here and just overriding my default constructor just to show you object created or not. As soon as this constructor executed, object will be created. Now let's create one more package form.rbu.ems.service classes And let me have one more package. Just a minute, guys. Yeah, service, DAO, config, util. So I have here controller class with at the rate controller. Now write service class, my service with at the rate service annotation. Now DAO, my DAO at the rate repository, not config, it is config. Config, my config class. On top of config class we use at the rate configuration. And what else? Utility class. My util class something on top of utilities at the rate component. Oh my god. Okay, now done. You have controller class, you have service class, DO class, config class, and utility class. Just you need not to configure this many classes. Just imagine you have five classes, five or six, five classes, configuring them in XML file and injecting all that nonsense. Now you need not to do manually. You need not to do. Instead you doing it automatically. Objects will be created now by IOC container. Just what you need to do is open your Spring XML file. You need to use context namespace. Okay, so you need to use context namespace. This context namespace. Using context namespace, context colon component hyphen scan base hyphen package is equal to your base package name. Base package name means all these packages, right, are under EMS package. If you visit this location and see how we created package structure is within com.rbu.ems, we have all these child packages config, DAO, service, util, and web. These all are part of this folder inside EMS folder. So I need to give that path until the parent package com.rbu.ems.star you can do. So it will visit this package. Inside this package, it will scan all the packages. Within that packages, when it find a class with the stereotype annotation, immediately it will create object. So I have configured all the stereotype annotations on top of my classes. So immediately it will create object. Just load it into your IOC container and see how it will work. Application context, new class path X. Yes, last session and this one today I'll upload. Now I can do it. Yeah. So as soon as you load it right, it will create all the objects. Let me add a debug point here. Alright. It is saying unused variable. Okay, man, I'll use it. Let me add debug point. Is it allowing or not? It's okay. Let me run it as a normal application and see. You can see all your objects are getting created. My config object created, DAO created, service created, util created, controller created. How? I did not mention these classes anywhere in XML file, but still all these 5 classes objects are getting created. Simple. Just I mentioned my package name, but let your application have 5 classes or 5,000 classes or 5 lakh classes or 5 million classes. Yeah, we never put that many classes, but imagine when you have huge number of classes in your application, you need not to worry about their configurations here. Imagine having 5 6 configurations are fine. You can configure bean with id is equal to something. Let's say Dikshit writed one class and his favorite id is D. He used it and he mentioned some class here, ABCD class. Like this, multiple teams or multiple team members are working on it and they are having lot of configurations here. All will go to the same configuration file and they will do lot of configurations here and they should be very much careful about their IDs also. Same ID if someone repeat it will not allow. And accidentally if I go and delete someone's file, someone's configurations, it will crash your application. So you need to be very much careful. Having 200, at least 120 beans itself here, looking ugly here. Not ugly, but maintenance is difficult here, right? Maintenance is difficult. Why should do all these configurations here if it is providing automation support? Just for 100 classes, I am seeing this much mess here. If you have thousands of classes, imagine configuring this many classes here and doing all the dependency injection and all. So you need not to do anything here. You need not to do anything here. Just create your classes with the stereotypes. For all type of classes, they given stereotypes. You don't have any problem here. For controllers, if it is a controller as per MVC, controller annotations. For service, service annotations. For DAOs, repository annotations. For configurations and all, configuration. For utilities, any miscellaneous classes component they given. So you need not to bother about any bean configurations here. If you still after stereotypes, if you are using bean here, lacking with somewhere you are lacking with the annotations. So you need to know about each and every annotation. So then you will never get chance to use XML file. Using XML file really not mandatory from now onwards for your beans configuration. It is easy to implement your application and maintaining your application. Nobody go to XML file and do the manual configurations here. So comfortably stereotype annotations given to create your classes. This first step we achieved it. Instead of manual object creation, we go through automated approach and we will create it. Here challenges will start. As soon as you went to automated approach, it is fine. It is creating objects. Then what about dependency injections? I have implemented my classes. I have implemented my classes, controller service, DAOs. How do I do dependency injection? Earlier, I used to do dependency injection manually from XML file. Now you are saying don't use any XML. Then how I can handle my dependency injection? Earlier, control is in my hand so that I could able to go to XML and able to manipulate it. But now I can't say any class here in my XML. Where do I do dependency injection? That is the question should rise in your mind. Okay, we will see that tomorrow. Okay, we will see that tomorrow how to do dependency injections. How to do dependency injection when I avoid XML file, right? How I can pass my primitives. Already we saw with value annotation. Once again, right? After this concept, let me put that concept as well here at the rate value and other annotations we have auto wide at the rate bean importance of each annotation. Now you will understand. Okay, as we avoided XML file, now we should find out alternates for that dependency injection which we used to do manually from XML file, right? That we should avoid now. Okay, to avoid that or to achieve that, whichever I am doing before from XML file, I should be able to achieve it from annotations. We will see that in tomorrow's session. Okay, you guys clear so far? Simple concept, stereotypes. Just you need to remember these annotations and mention that annotations on top of your classes. Bus. Okay, just go through this example. I'll upload it now. Yes, if you have any questions, let me upload it. Stereotype. Can you Google it and tell me now? What is stereotype? Auto object creation. What is the meaning of stereotype? Can someone find the meaning of stereotype? Exactly. So can you try to apply this to these annotations and will it gives any meaning for it? Stereotype meaning a widely held but fixed and another idea particular type of person or thing. Oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or a thing, or a relief printing plate cast in a mold made from composed type or an original plate. A view or represent as a stereotype. The city is too easily stereotyped as an individual wasteland. So what they are trying to say from the stereotype meaning is a particular type to say a particular like how our government you'll divide us, right, based on caste wise. The caste is stereotype or a religion is a stereotype to categorizing you may say, right, categorize. So it will categorize your application classes, categorize by controller, categorize by service, categorize by DAO, categorize by configuration, categorize by utilities. Okay, it is categorizing your classes with this particular annotations. When you mention a controller annotation on top of a class, you should believe that class is a controller. That's it. So for controller, specific annotations given. So these stereotypes are, dividing your application into, multiple layers, as we thought, MVC. For controller specific annotations, for service specific annotations, for DAO specific annotations, for configuration separate specific annotation, and for any utilities they given specific annotations. Beyond this, you don't write any other class. Either your application should have a controller, service, DAO, or one configuration, one or more. I'm saying configurations, or you should have some utilities. But apart from that, you don't have anything else. Okay, these annotations must be enough to categorize your classes. So during after categorization, it will add some capabilities also that we will see in next upcoming sessions. Not only categorizing, it will add some capabilities also. Not only categorizing, it will add some capabilities also. When you mention controller, it will give some capacity to this controller to behave it as a controller. It will give some features to this class to act it as a controller class. Same way service and same way repository class, configuration class. Every annotation is having some special features. We will know about them, okay, going forward. But for now, just consider them like a simple annotations to create objects. Okay, yeah, we will see each one very in depth again. When to use controller, when to use service. Basically, in MVC, we will know more about controller. While doing DAO operations, we will know more about this repository class. While doing AOP and transactions, we will see about service. And in the next session itself, we will know more about configuration and component as well. Okay, yeah, you'll be knowing, right, about each and every annotation. Need not to worry. Okay, any questions apart from it?